The Zarek Dominion had conquered and subjugated countless worlds, their vast empire spanning across dozens of star systems, each one bending to their will. Ruthless and efficient, they ruled through fear, precision, and overwhelming military might. The idea that they could be thrown off balance by a species so unpolished, so chaotic, seemed preposterous. But the humans were about to change that. On the bridge of the Imperious Glory, Commander Vorlek stood at the helm, the shimmering nebula of the Xeris cluster swirling outside the viewport. His razor-sharp features were drawn in a scowl, his cold blue eyes scanning the strange signal that had appeared on Xerec sensors. A series of erratic transmissions had come from the unknown vessels, alien in every sense of the word. The Xerac had encountered many primitive species in their long history, but nothing quite like this. A low hum filled the bridge as Vorlek barked at his crew. "Analyze it," he demanded. His voice was as cold as the vacuum of space itself. Lieutenant Nirek, a technician with silver scales and a perpetual frown, typed furiously at her console. "Sir, the signal is unreadable. It's erratic, scrambled, almost like a broadcast of some kind." Her antennae twitched nervously. "It's mostly incoherent data, but we're detecting music." "Music," Vorlek repeated, his voice laced with disdain. The Xerac were not a species to waste time on trivialities. Music was something only the weak and frivolous indulged in. "Give me something useful." But before Nira could respond, the comms console lit up with a transmission. The translation system immediately kicked in, but what it played out was not what Vorlek expected. The first sound that filled the room was a deep, guttural voice, shouting something indecipherable, followed by a piercing, distorted guitar riff that made the Xeric crew's ears ring. The transmission was glitching, as if it had been hastily patched together. A moment later, a voice echoed through the bridge, booming with the kind of enthusiasm one might expect at a raucous celebration. "Welcome to Earth." Before Vorlek could demand an explanation, a flurry of distorted noises flooded the speakers. The next few seconds were pure chaos, static, a rooster's crowing, and then an unexpected, high-pitched squeal of something that sounded like a human attempting to sing, poorly. "What in the stars is that?" Vorlek demanded, his patience wearing thin. "It's a greeting, Commander," Narek said, still trying to make sense of the signals. "But it doesn't follow any logical pattern." There was another pause, followed by a chorus of random shouts, more nonsensical laughter, and what sounded like a chorus of children screaming, "We're number one! We're number one!" Vorlek slammed his fist onto the console. "This is absurd. What kind of species behaves like this?" Nirek glanced nervously at her console. I believe they're trying to communicate with us, but the methods are so unconventional." "Then let's give them an appropriate greeting," Vorlek said coldly. "Prepare to transmit a message demanding their immediate surrender." Just as the command left his lips, the comms crackled once more. A message appeared, clear as day, though no less confusing. "This is your friendly neighborhood galactic human peacekeeper. We come in peace, but we also come with snacks. Bring on the cookies. Over." Vorlek stared, mouth slightly open. He was not used to feeling bewildered. Snacks. The bridge crew looked as though they were questioning the very nature of their existence. For the first time in his career, Vorlek doubted his own understanding of galactic protocol. The Xerac were at war with ruthless civilizations and formidable empires. Yet here they were, facing a species that seemed intent on shaking up the universe with nothing but chaotic signals, absurd humor, and, for reasons that defied logic, cookies. The tension in the room was palpable, the question of how to respond to these bizarre humans hanging in the air. But before Vorlek could speak again, the transmission cut out, and a new signal blared through the comms. This time, it was unmistakably human. A cheerful voice saying, "We'll be there in 5 minutes. Bring your best memes." And with that, the battle for the stars, well, at least the stars surrounding the Xeric Empire, was about to take an unexpected turn. The Imperious Glory's bridge was eerily quiet. For the first time in Xerac history, a species had managed to completely confound them. Commander Vorlek stared at the communications console, his mind racing. His warships, the pinnacle of Xerac military engineering, were poised to obliterate this strange human fleet, but something about their behavior was unsettling. They didn't act like typical primitive species. They didn't fear. They didn't even seem to understand fear in the same way. "Commander, their fleet is approaching," Lieutenant Nirek said, breaking the silence. Her antennae twitched nervously. The human ships were growing closer. Patchwork vessels with mismatched hulls, defying all standard designs. None of them appeared to have the sleek, deadly look of a typical warship. Instead, they seemed almost whimsical. And this worried Vorlek more than he cared to admit. He turned to his officers. "Prepare the fleet. If they wish to test our might, we shall show them the strength of the Xerac Empire." The order was given, and the battle stations were activated. The hum of engines filled the bridge as Vorlek's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. He could feel the familiar pulse of readiness. But the strange, unsettling transmission they had received just moments ago replayed in his mind. The human approach didn't make sense. They were offering cookies for Star's sake. "Sir, their fleet has halted. They're sending another transmission," Nirek reported, uncertainty creeping into her voice. Vorlek nodded grimly. "Put it through." The comm screen blinked and static filled the air. Then, out of the chaos, a single image materialized. A smiling human face with a bright red baseball cap. The face was animated, grinning like a lunatic. Above it, the text on the screen read, "Get ready to party. Let's make this legendary." The voice that followed was as loud and brash as it was incomprehensible. "We're coming in hot. Please fasten your seatbelts, or don't. Do whatever you want. It's your life." Vorlek's eyes narrowed in disbelief. What is this nonsense? His officers exchanged glances, equally perplexed. The transmission continued with a laugh track, then a loud pop as a balloon deflated. "Warning. Epic battle ahead. We might throw some foam noodles at you. Don't say we didn't warn you." One of the junior officers, a young Xerac named Telek, spoke up hesitantly. "Sir, this may be a trick, but it could also be a declaration of war. Should we fire first?" The question hung in the air for a moment, pregnant with tension. Vorlek considered the situation carefully. These humans were not like anything they had encountered before. There was no sense of military discipline or grandeur in their actions. It was pure chaos, utter ridiculousness, and that, in its own way, was a kind of power. He clenched his fists. "Open fire." The order was instantaneous. The Xerac fleet's massive cannons powered up, their blue plasma cannons roaring to life as the first volley of energy bolts shot toward the human ships. But then, nothing happened. The energy blasts slammed harmlessly into what appeared to be nothing. For a moment, Vorlek stared in confusion. His weapons were designed to obliterate entire planets, yet the human ships were disappearing. The Xerac scanners were baffled. One by one, human ships flickered out of sight, leaving only a trail of sparkling lights and giant inflatable ducks. "Sir, they've deployed. Ducks," Lieutenant Nirek said, her voice faltering. Vorlek felt his jaw tighten. This is not a war. This is madness. Before he could issue another command, the human fleet reappeared in full view. But now they were dancing. They weren't even engaging in a battle. Instead, the humans were projecting holographic images of themselves in ridiculous outfits, performing elaborate synchronized dance moves to an upbeat melody. And then the surprise hit. From a dozen human ships came what could only be described as a sonic wave, but not a weapon. No, this was something entirely different. The sound blasted through the Xerac ship's communication systems. An unrelenting, ridiculous series of beeps, boops, and whoops, followed by what sounded like a group of humans shouting, "We are number one." Vorlek's head throbbed. This wasn't a battle. It was a distraction. The Zirak had been duped. But there was one thing Vorlek could not allow. He could not let this embarrassment continue. Activate countermeasures, he ordered through clenched teeth. Deploy everything. Let's show these fools who rules the galaxy. The imperious glory shuddered under the weight of the human countermeasures. Vorlek slammed his fist on the armrest, his face twisting with disbelief. This was not how the galaxy was supposed to work. His fleet, built to crush entire civilizations, was now tangled in an utterly surreal spectacle of dance parties and confetti. Report, he barked, his patience fraying. Lieutenant Nirek glanced at her screen, trying to comprehend what was happening. Sir, they've activated. More ducks. Large inflatable ones. They seem to be absorbing our energy blasts. They're bouncing, sir. Bouncing? Vorlek's voice was cold, his words slow as he tried to process the sheer absurdity of it all. What is this madness? Before Nirek could answer, the transmission system flashed once more. The face of the same grinning human appeared on screen, waving enthusiastically. Hey there, big fella. You want to join our party? We've got karaoke, laser lights, and pizza rolls for days. The transmission cut off, and Vorlek's already strained nerves snapped. Enough. He turned to his officers. This will not stand. Initiate full offensive. This nonsense ends today. With a sharp motion, the Zarek fleet released a barrage of plasma fire, aimed squarely at the center of the human formation. As the beams lanced through space, tearing apart debris, one thing became clear. The humans weren't trying to dodge. Instead, their ships seemed to be dancing. They swirled and spun in impossible ways, not evading the attack, actively moving in sync with it, as if they had rehearsed this for decades. Vorlek's jaw tightened. What are they doing? Nirek, still staring at the screen in disbelief, finally managed to report. I think they're dancing to the blasts. They've launched some kind of coordinated counterattack using. She glanced at her console in confusion. Holographic backup dancers. The screen shifted again. This time, it wasn't a human face, but a rotating holographic disco ball that filled the viewport of the imperious glory. Pulsating colors filled the space, flashing in time with an up-tempo electronic beat. The human ships, now glowing in neon, moved in erratic patterns, sending waves of glitter and streamers across space. Zirak weapon systems went haywire as they tried, and failed, to lock onto the dancing ships. What is this? Vorlek shouted, furiously punching buttons. The Zyrek's sophisticated targeting system continued to malfunction as the human ships, surrounded by holographic images of dancing animals and laser light shows, swirled and twirled in space. It was as if the humans had weaponized absurdity itself. I'll tell you what it is, sir, said Telak, the junior officer who had been quiet until now. It's chaos. Pure chaos. And they're using it to win. Vorlek's gaze sharpened. The Zirak were masters of war, but this wasn't a battle of firepower or strategy. This was something different, something alien. But he was a warrior, and no amount of glitter and lasers would stop him from crushing this infestation. Activate the gravitas field, he ordered. A low hum vibrated through the ship as the Zarek flagship activated its gravity distortion weapon, a system designed to destabilize the battlefield by manipulating the very force of gravity. The human ships, which had been spinning like a child's toy, were now yanked toward the flagship in a spiraling, dizzying dance of centrifugal force. We've got them now, Vorlek muttered to himself, a gleam of triumph in his eyes. The human ships would be trapped, unable to escape the intense gravitational pull. They'd be crushed under the force of their own velocity. But then, just as the human ships were closing in, something entirely unexpected happened. The gravitas field shattered. It wasn't a technical malfunction. It was as if the laws of physics themselves were bending in response to the absurdity of the human tactics. The human ships bounced off the gravitational field, using the same buoyancy that had made their inflatable ducts so effective. And the most bewildering part, they laughed. The human ships erupted in unison, broadcasting the sound of raucous, maniacal laughter across the comms. This is just the warm-up. The real fun begins now. Here comes the ultimate meme bomb. Vorlek felt the color drain from his face. His crew stared in horror as a massive glowing image appeared in space before them. A giant, pixelated meme. The words, in bold neon letters, read, PLNNKE. And then, the meme bomb activated. Commander Vorlek stood frozen. His fists clenched so tightly that his knuckles were white. The meme bomb had just detonated in a dazzling explosion of neon pixels, and the battlefield was awash in chaos. The image that had appeared before the Xyrek fleet, PLANKKED, was now seared into Vorlek's mind, mocking him. It wasn't just the sight of the absurd meme. It was the way the humans had used it to throw his fleet into disarray. The Xyrek flagship had been caught in the blast, its systems scrambled by a bombardment of unfiltered human absurdity. Their comms were flooded with nonsensical sounds, honking car horns, bleating sheep, and the unmistakable dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun of the infamous epic sax guy loop. "We're losing control, Commander," Narek reported, her voice quivering. "The meme bomb has caused a cascading failure in the targeting systems. It's like they've hacked our very perception of reality." Vorlek gritted his teeth. He was a Xyrek, master of conquest, iron-willed and ruthless. But this was beyond anything he had prepared for. "Recalibrate," he barked. "Reboot the systems. Engage the secondary weapons." It didn't matter. The humans were everywhere, slipping through every defense like water through cracks in a dam. Their ships, still adorned with holographic cats and dancing vegetables, now unleashed their next wave. Foam noodles, thousands of them, spewing from the human ships like some kind of living tidal wave. The noodles, bright green and pink, wrapped around Xyrek ships, creating a disorienting barrier that temporarily rendered their weapons useless. "Why are we being attacked by noodles?" Lieutenant Telek cried, his voice thick with confusion. "We're not being attacked, you fool," Vorlek snapped, his voice icy with frustration. "This is humiliation. They're playing with us." But no amount of anger could change the fact that the Xyrek fleet was losing ground. The human ships, with their unpredictable movements, danced through space with a precision that seemed entirely unintentional, slaloming around laser fire and plasma bolts. The Xyrek couldn't track them. It was as though the laws of warfare had been turned on their head. One of the Xyrek warlords, General Cathar, a towering figure covered in spiked armor, contacted the flagship. "Vorlek, we've got a serious problem. The humans just launched laser-engraved pizza boxes at us. What kind of weapon is that?" Vorlek's mind raced. A warship, armed with devastating weapons of planetary destruction, was being assaulted with pizza boxes. "Get it together, Cathar," Vorlek growled. "It's just a distraction. Our might will overwhelm them soon enough." But then, as if the universe itself was conspiring against him, the worst happened. The human ships slowed, their movements taking on a deliberate rhythm. And then, over the communications channel, came a voice. A sing-songy, overly chipper voice that could only belong to one type of human. "Ladies and gentlemen, prepare yourselves for the human tradition of karaoke." The Xyrek watched in absolute horror as the human ships simultaneously projected massive holograms of karaoke stages, complete with neon lights, glittering stars, and a crowd cheering wildly. A booming voice followed. "Let's get this party started." And then, to the disbelief of every Xyrek soldier on the fleet, human pilots started singing. The first song blared out, "I Will Survive" by Gloria Gaynor. "What in the stars?" General Cathar muttered. A few Xeric officers began to laugh. Others, in defiance of their pride, looked away in embarrassment. As the humans belted out the lyrics with all the passion of a karaoke champion, the Xerac were left standing in the middle of a battlefield filled with exploding pizza boxes, inflatable ducks, and the soul-crushing, ear-piercing rendition of I Will Survive. The humans were treating this like a contest of endurance, who could withstand the most absurdity. Vorlek's eyes narrowed. He couldn't allow this to continue. Not like this. His pride, his entire career, everything, was on the line. He needed to crush them. Fire the main cannon, he bellowed, his voice desperate. The Imperious Glory's main weapon, the Desolation Cannon, hummed to life, glowing with an ominous, deadly intensity. Vorlek watched as the massive beam charged, preparing to tear the human fleet apart once and for all. But then, the human ships danced around the beam. It wasn't that they dodged it. No, that would have been too predictable. Instead, they twirled in perfect rhythm to the beam, as if mocking its very existence. One by one, each human ship moved in perfect synchrony with the trajectory of the blast, and the energy beam missed every single shot. As the humans completed their daring dance moves, the transmission cut through the Xeric fleet again. You missed. Better luck next time. Vorlek's face turned an unnatural shade of red. He slammed his fist against the armrest again, fury bubbling inside him. They were not just winning. They were mocking him. The Imperious Glory lurched again as the human ships continued to taunt and evade. Commander Vorlek, his face red with frustration, gritted his teeth so hard his mandibles almost cracked. How had it come to this? His fleet, unmatched in firepower and strategy, was being outwitted by a species that seemed to thrive on chaos and idiocy. The Xeric Empire, once the dominant force in the galaxy, was being humiliated in real time across the stars. Deploy the anti-meme defense system, Vorlek commanded, his voice thick with tension. I don't care what it takes. Stop those blasted human ships. Nyrek glanced at the console. Sir, our standard defenses are ineffective. Their ships are disrupting our systems with nothing but distractions. We can't lock onto them. Then use the gravital suppression field. Vorlek snapped, desperate for something, anything, that would put an end to this. Target them with everything we've got. The Imperious Glory deployed its gravitational weaponry once more, but this time the human ships weren't just swerving. They had coordinated their movements with such precision that the Xeric flagship was now entangled in their absurd choreography. The human vessels, as if powered by some unholy rhythm, bounced and flipped around the Xeric warships in perfect synchrony. Commander, they're mocking us, Lieutenant Nyrek said, the words laced with disbelief. It's like they're in on some cosmic joke. Then let's give them a joke they won't forget. Vorlek barked. Initiate the destruction beam, all targeting on the lead human ship. His fingers slammed against the console. The Xeric fleet's final devastating weapon began to hum, energy coalescing at the heart of each warship, ready to fire a concentrated beam of pure destructive power. The whole fleet held its breath. Lock on to their flagship, Vorlek ordered. But as the beams fired, the human flagship didn't attempt to evade. It danced. In a flawless, gravity-defying move, the human ship twirled, spun, and broke out into a wild aerial somersault, dodging the attack with absolute precision. The destruction beam veered off course and shot straight into the void, leaving only a trail of disappointment in its wake. Nice try. Better luck next time. The human voice boomed from the speakers. Now, prepare yourselves for the final MEME bomb. What? Vorlek screamed, panic creeping into his voice. Before the Xerac could even process what was happening, the human ships deployed another wave of holographic projectiles. This time, instead of pizza boxes or foam noodles, they sent out massive digital billboards into space. The billboards displayed a single massive meme, A close-up of a smug cat, wearing sunglasses, with the words, "Not today, Zirak." The meme exploded in a burst of neon light, creating an electromagnetic shockwave that scrambled the Zirak fleet's communications. For a moment, all the Zirak could hear was static. The chaos was so intense that even Vorlek, once calm, calculating, and unbeatable, felt his composure crack. Did they just send us a cat meme in space? General Cawthor's voice came over the comms, incredulous. We're being defeated by memes. I will NOTBDEFEATD by these. Darn Seiatus. Vorlek screamed, his voice rising in fury. Activate phase shift technology. We'll leave this battlefield and regroup in a new sector. The Zarek flagship began to power up, preparing to phase shift out of the sector, but just as it was about to disappear into another dimension, something caught their sensors. A gigantic human ship appeared on the horizon. It wasn't sleek or well-armed. It was the exact opposite. It was a floating, garish mass of flashing neon signs, a disco ball, and streaming confetti. It was the size of a moon. The ship had the audacity to broadcast the following message. Sorry, we're late to the party. Who's ready to lose their minds? What is that monstrosity? General Cawthor demanded, his voice dripping with horror. It's glowing. They're not even trying to fight anymore, Lieutenant Telek said, shaking his head in disbelief. They're just trolling us. Vorlek's hands trembled as he watched the human ship's arrival. The imperious glory, now surrounded by neon signs, holographic fireworks, and laser beams, was slowly being driven mad by the ridiculousness of it all. His officers' expressions were a mix of fear, confusion, and a dawning realization. They couldn't win. In the distance, the giant human ship opened a massive bay door, revealing what could only be described as a massive floating boombox. The airwaves buzzed as an obnoxiously loud voice blasted over the comms, delivering the final insult. Let's drop some beats, baby. Prepare for the meme apocalypse. And with that, the Zarek fleet was engulfed in a cacophony of light, sound, and absurdity. The battle for the galaxy had been lost, not by weapons or strategy, but by the sheer, unrelenting power of human humor. The imperious glory was drowning in a storm of absurdity. The giant human ship, the glorious memester, had unleashed its full offensive. An assault of pulsating lights, booming beats, and digital confetti that filled the entire battlefield. Every Zyrek vessel within range was now caught in the gravitational pull of pure, unfiltered chaos. Vorlek stood at the center of his bridge, his antennae twitching in a futile attempt to process what was happening. His crew, typically composed and disciplined, now wore expressions of sheer disbelief. The glorious memester had released its final weapon, an audio-visual barrage so overwhelming that the Zirak couldn't think straight. A barrage of distorted memes, clashing imagery, and random internet references filled their screens, and a new voice, smooth and completely devoid of seriousness, boomed across their comm systems. Buckle up, kiddos. It's time for the Mimgeddon, and you're the star of the show. The Zyrek flagship shook as holographic images of dancing llamas, cringy cat videos, and absurdly exaggerated "Success Kid" memes floated past. A massive banner appeared across the Zyrek fleet. Sorry, not sorry. We're losing our grip on the fleet, Commander, Lieutenant Nirek said, her voice weak with exasperation. I can't focus. I can't. This isn't a battle. It's a nightmare. Vorlek clenched his fists. We're not losing to this insanity. Prepare the backup fleet. If we retreat, it will be the end of our empire. But as his crew scrambled to prepare for a desperate escape, the human ships escalated the absurdity even further. The glorious memester now broadcast a meme-laden version of the never-ending story theme song. It was a loop, an endless cascade of obnoxious lyrics, interspersed with ridiculous facial expressions from random human celebrities, none of whom had any bearing on the situation. You can't escape, Vorlek. The memes have already infiltrated your mind. You're trapped in the meme dimension. Vorlek's head throbbed. He felt something deep within him snap as the surreal assault on his senses reached new heights. The sound was unbearable. The flashing lights felt like they were burning into his soul. Was this a battle? Was this war? Or had the Xeric Empire somehow been cursed to experience the apocalypse of absurdity? Deploy the anti-saturation fields, Vorlek shouted, his voice thick with panic. We have to shut them down. We can't lose. Not like this. But as soon as the Xerac attempted to initiate their countermeasures, the human ships responded by launching a flurry of digital penguins, large, animated, waddling creatures that bounced around in space like weird, jovial missiles. The penguins were programmed to sing in off-key voices, interrupting the Xerac's communications with opera renditions of popular pop songs. Is this how you want to go out? Came the human voice again, chipper as ever. Singing penguins are just the beginning, baby. Vorlek's mind reeled. The Xerac had fought entire species in the past, oppressive armies, vast fleets, civilizations that could match them in strength. But this wasn't a war. It was a parade of humiliation. We can't retreat, Vorlek muttered under his breath. He had always been a conqueror, a bringer of order and discipline. But these humans, with their chaotic memes, their nonsensical weapons, had unraveled his resolve. The very fabric of his identity seemed to be shattering under the onslaught. Suddenly, a voice cut through the chaos. A different voice. It was Cathar, the general, sounding oddly calm. Commander, I have an idea. Vorlek turned sharply. What is it, Cathar? The memester is powered by a new energy source. A kind of chaotic energy, Cathar explained. I've been analyzing their attacks. There's a pattern to the chaos. If we can exploit it, we might be able to reverse their technology, turn it against them. Vorlek stared at Cathar, hope stirring for the first time in hours. You can do this. I can. But we'll need to make contact with the memester directly. No more hiding in the shadows. This will take everything we have. Cathar said. The memes are only powerful as long as they remain unchallenged. If we can disrupt the core signal, we might be able to neutralize them. Vorlek's fists tightened, but this time with renewed determination. Then let's destroy this meme menace. The imperious glory was shaking at its core as Commander Vorlek stood at the center of the bridge, staring at the screens in disbelief. The human ship Glorious Memester had unleashed another wave of absurdity. A massive holographic version of the Rickroll, with a laser-etched version of Rick Astley dancing through space, singing, "Never Gonna Give You Up" on loop. The very fabric of the Xeric's fleet was unraveling under the barrage of this intergalactic absurdity. But then, a glimmer of hope. General Cathar's plan, his last plan, was beginning to take shape. Commander, Cathar's voice crackled through the comms. We have to move quickly. The longer we wait, the more power the humans gain. Their memes are becoming self-replicating. Vorlek turned to his officers, his mind focused like a laser. Deploy the special neural override modules, he ordered, his voice low but firm. The neural override modules were experimental tech that could scramble neural pathways, both organic and synthetic. If they could interrupt the human signal, they might be able to break through the meme chaos. They would have one shot at this. Nyrek glanced at the panel. Commander, it's risky. The neural fields are unstable. If they misfire, they could destabilize our entire fleet. I don't care. Vorlek snapped. We either win this fight, or we're consumed by it. We cannot afford to lose to memes. Cathar's voice came through again, this time tinged with excitement. We're ready, Commander. The module is locked in. Initiating Phase 1. Neural disruption. On screen, the first wave of neural override modules fired. Massive pulses of energy shot out from the Xeric flagship, spreading throughout the fleet like shockwaves. For a moment, nothing happened. The human ships continued their chaotic dance, flashing with light, and random phrases. Then, slowly, the human ship started to react. What's going on? The human voice on the comms sputtered in confusion. This isn't supposed to happen. Vorlek felt a surge of triumph. The meme signal was beginning to distort. The humans were losing their grip on the chaos they had created. All units, Vorlek barked, his voice rising with excitement. Initiate Phase 2. Fire all disruptors on the memester. We have them now. The Xeric fleet launched their disruptors, focusing everything they had left on the colossal human ship. A volley of energy blasts cut through space, striking the glorious memester directly. For a moment, it seemed as if the absurdity was faltering. The ship's lights dimmed, the holographic images began to glitch, and the confetti seemed to lose its power. But then, a chilling transmission came through. You think you've won. Oh, Commander, you don't know what you're up against. The human voice was now distorted, almost as if it had taken on a life of its own. Let me introduce you to the infinite loop. Suddenly, the glorious memester unleashed a new weapon, a massive, infinite meme loop, a self-replicating series of internet memes so powerful that they began to distort reality itself. In seconds, every Xeric ship within range was flooded with a never-ending cascade of memes, each one feeding into the next. Images of dancing hamsters, meme-worthy frogs, and obscure references began to overwhelm every screen, flooding the battlefield with an almost tangible force. No, not again. Nirik screamed, her voice filled with panic. They're invading our minds. Vorlek's heart pounded. The Xeric fleet was paralyzed. Their systems were locking up, their minds suffocating under the weight of the endless memes. The memester was creating an infinite loop that was impossible to break. But then Cawthor's voice came through, steady as ever. Commander, this is our last chance. We need to get to the memester itself. We can't defeat the memes in our ships, but we can destroy the source. Vorlek's eyes narrowed as he stared at the Xeric flagship. Their only hope was to board the memester itself. He turned to his officers. Prepare the boarding pods. We're going in. Commander, wait. Nirik protested. If we board the human ship, we'll be walking into the heart of the meme storm. The entire ship is an anomaly. Every step we take might push us further into the meme dimension. I don't care. Vorlek shouted. We finish this now. We either stop the humans, or we fall to their madness. As the Xeric prepared to board, Vorlek gathered his closest officers. This would be their final chance to take back control of the galaxy, but the path was treacherous. Would they succeed, or would they become another meme to haunt the galaxy forever? The Xeric fleet was in chaos. Every ship was shaking. Every officer was struggling to keep their senses intact as the infinite loop of memes engulfed them. For a brief moment, it seemed like the galaxy itself would collapse into a swirling vortex of dancing cats, poorly photoshopped images, and questionable viral videos. Yet, amid the chaos, Commander Vorlek made his decision. Prepare the boarding pods, Vorlek commanded, his voice cutting through the noise of the battlefield. We are going to end this now. The Xeric crew scrambled to execute the orders, but there was no denying the tension in the air. The memester, a floating fortress of absurdity, pulsed with energy. It was a strange thing, more an anomaly than a proper warship. Its exterior was garishly decorated with flashing neon signs and giant memes plastered across its hull. It had no visible weapons, but the Xeric had learned the hard way that it didn't need them. The power of sheer chaos was its weapon. Vorlek stood at the entrance to the boarding pod, his jaw set. This is it, he muttered to himself. Either we bring order, or we fall to madness. As the Xeric pods launched toward the memester, the reality of their mission hit. They were about to board the ship that had brought the once-feared empire to its knees, and they would do it without the comfort of a plan. The human ship loomed larger as the pods neared. It was surrounded by a field of pulsating memes, each one more ridiculous than the last. Suddenly, a voice boomed across the comms. Well, Looks like you finally decided to show up. Vorlek gritted his teeth. We've had enough of your games, human. He snapped. The pod doors opened, and the Zirek stormed out, their weapons drawn. They were immediately hit by a wave of meme-induced confusion. The corridor was lined with holographic billboards featuring dancing anime characters and YOLO slogans flashing in neon. Overhead, the ceiling was painted with absurd memes of angry birds and overused catchphrases. It was disorienting, but the Zirek pushed forward. They came to the control room of the memester, where a single human stood. He was wearing oversized sunglasses, a neon-colored shirt with the words "Dank Lord" printed across the chest, and had a face that could only be described as smug. "Welcome to the party, fellas," the human said, raising his arms dramatically. "I was wondering when you'd finally show up. But I gotta warn you, there's no off switch for memes, my dudes." Vorlek stepped forward, his eyes burning with fury. "This ends now, human. You've humiliated the Zirek Empire long enough." The human grinned. "Nah, you can't stop the memes. They're everywhere. The more you fight it, the stronger they get." "You're wrong," Vorlek said, his voice cold and resolute. "We've already begun the counterattack. The memes are nothing but distraction." Without hesitation, he activated the neural override module embedded in his suit. The device sent a pulse of energy toward the central control panel. The human's smug grin faltered for a moment, but then he laughed. "Oh, please, you think your little tech can beat the power of pure, unfiltered internet culture?" Just as the human was about to press a button to unleash another wave of memes, a massive meme appeared behind him. A giant image of a clown wearing a party hat, with the words "You played yourself" written underneath in bold letters. The human's face paled. "Wait, what's happening?" At that moment, the neural override pulse struck the control panel with full force. The holograms flickered and vanished. The endless barrage of memes stopped. For the first time in hours, silence descended upon the ship. Vorlek stood tall, his breath steady. "You were right about one thing," he said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "You can't stop the memes, but you can't control them either." The memester's control systems began to spark as the human ship slowly powered down. The once irresistible meme loop collapsed in on itself, broken by the very chaos that had given it power. The human stood there, stunned. No. How did you?" With a final, defiant gesture, Vorlek turned and addressed his officers. "Prepare to return to the fleet. We've won today, not with strength, but with intellect. Let this be a lesson to the galaxy. Chaos may try to break us, but it is only in order that we stand strong." As the Zirek boarded their return ships, the memester drifted helplessly in space, its power drained. The battlefield was quiet for the first time in hours, save for the faint sound of a lone, distorted version of "Never Gonna Give You Up" echoing in the distance.